must be the greatest. I told the world, I talk to God every day. I am the king of the world.
Hold it. Hold it, you're not that pretty.
I'm a bad man.
Wait.
I shook up the world.
It's time!
You're listening to the Cage Nation TV Prizefight Podcast. Coming to you from the Coastal Cameron Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Are you ready?
Here's your host, the Big Fellah, Albert Cameron.
Let's get it on! March on to victory, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Prizefight Podcast. We are trucking on with our pink out every October. Every program that we put out has the pink flag where we are remembering folks who have lost their battle with cancer and encouraging those who are going with it. I have faith in the human condition. I have the belief that we are going to find a cure for cancer, and no longer will that word, that disease, afflict the lives of men and women. I firmly believe that. I think that we are as advanced enough as a race. We're going to get ahead of cancer, and no longer can it bother us. Coming up this week on the Prizefight Podcast, we got This Week in MMA History. We got the headlines, plus we are getting real. We are getting down to the nitty-gritty. Issues that need to be addressed right now, this moment, in order for MMA to continue and to continue growing into the fastest sport on planet Earth. We're talking from a place of love, but it is the tough love episode of the Prizefight Podcast. All that, more, right here. Don't go nowhere. It's the Prizefight Podcast. Weight cut management is one of the biggest hurdles that a combat athlete will endure as they prepare for competition. Our friend Sheena Lee believes wholeheartedly that Plexus is just the supplement that could give you the boost that you need for body weight management. Plexus is all natural, GMO-free, and gluten-free. One pink drink a day and you are off and running. Find out what Plexus can do for you by visiting facebook.com/slimdownfuelup or by sending Sheena an email at slimdownfuelup@gmail.com. Again, that is facebook.com/slimdownfuelup or slimdownfuelup@gmail.com. Get a hold of Sheena today and let's find out what science can do for your next weight cut. These are news headlines courtesy of SureDog.com. For Cage Nation TV Australia, I'm Winston Shade. Ultimate Fighter winner Jesse Taylor receives a 1-year USADA suspension for a positive test. John Gotti III eyes pro MMA debut at CES MMA 46 on October 27th. The UFC's Michelle Waterson has been cast on MTV's The Challenge Chance vs. Stars. Links to these headlines can be found at www.cagenationtv.com and are courtesy of ShareDog.com. For Cage Nation TV Australia, I'm Winston Shade. Hey everyone, while we're taking a break, we just want to remind you that right now we are looking for new people to join the Cage Nation TV roster of creators. We're looking for creators who have a fight circuit close to home, who have a sincere passion for combat sports, and would like to help us bring new territories to the forefront of our coverage. For more information, visit www.cagenationtv.com/opportunity/pioneer or send us an email at cagenationtv@gmail.com. This here is a brand new segment to the Prizefight Podcast we're calling the Weekly Roundup. We're putting out the question to the masses through Facebook and Twitter was this week, and no one replied, but hey, you know what? That is okay. The question we posed this week was, who do you think is the next heavyweight that's going to be changing the scene completely? Since no one had taken the opportunity to reply, and I'm just going to assume that they're being shy, and that also is okay. Personally, I think it's going to be guys like Alan Crowder, recently signed to the UFC. He has a good look. He's sturdy, has hands. The UFC heavyweight division needs him. I'm also looking at guys like Nathan Bryant, who was a King of the Cage veteran, really made a big impact for KOTC in the Pittsburgh area. But also, I'm counting on a sleeper by the name of Tony Lopez. He is a King of the Cage veteran, heavyweight champion, and super heavyweight champion. And I'll tell you what impresses me about that man is that he's willing to fight guys who are much larger than he is. Despite being a little bit older, I think the UFC is in such dire needs of heavyweights that it's not going to matter. That's this week's Roundup. Tell me what you think. Twitter at CageNationTV.com. On Facebook, send us an email. Let's get the conversation going. We're going to figure out what next week's question is, and I'm hoping we get you guys some interacting a little bit. Let's get on with the Prizefight Podcast. Welcome back to the Prizefight Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, the Big Fellah, Mr. Albert Miller, a.k.a. Albert Cameron, a.k.a. whatever I decide to call myself this week. There's a pretty good opportunity to start referring to myself as the artist formerly known as Albert, for grins and giggles mostly, just because I think it might be a little funny. This week on the Prizefight Podcast, we're taking a big look at things that need to change in MMA right now, this moment, in order for the sport to move into the future. I mean, there are certain things that need to be changed right now in order for growth to happen. We're identifying that. But before I get into all of that, I wanted to briefly discuss the partnership that has just been signed between Invicta FC and Pancrase and what it really means. First off, it's a huge opportunity for women's MMA. Pancrase has all of the longevity of the UFC. UFC's first event was November 1993. Pancrase, I think, was a year before that, if not a year, like 9 months to a year before the UFC. And they've been promoting women's MMA much longer than the North American powerhouse of the UFC. Fighters like Rin Nakai, who just fought at Risen Fighting Federation and he's a UFC veteran, has a fight with Miesha Tate. This deal is going to help develop the women's weight classes, and that is sorely needed. Right now, the UFC has 3 women's weight classes, which would be featherweight, bantamweight, and strawweight. Joanna Jędrzejczyk is clearing out strawweight. Bantamweight really hasn't been the same since Ronda Rousey came and went, and featherweight is under so much contention that it's hard to keep everything together. And Chris Cyborg has got a boxing license, so that's not spelling things that are awesome for women's featherweight. But this partnership with Pancrase and Invicta FC, I think that is the right idea. That is the partnerships that absolutely need to happen for longevity of the sport and the divisions. So that's my take on that. I'm very happy about it, and I think that is just going to be fantastic in all realms. But this week on the Prizefight Podcast, we're talking about issues that need to be addressed right now, opportunities for improvement. Let's take the whole hyper PC, we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings route, and let's say there are some really good opportunities for improvement. It's a tough love kind of thing, and I want to be extremely specifically clear going forward that I'm saying these things out of love for the sport. I love mixed martial arts so much. The sport has given so much to me and opened up so many opportunities for me that it is in a place of love that I'm identifying these opportunities for improvement from a place of I want to be involved in the sport in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and then I'm identifying these roadblocks that need to be addressed right away. It's because I love the sport. First thing that I've identified that needs to happen right away is contendership needs to be cultivated to keep top-level talent from going to other sports. And I think you know which talent I'm talking about when I say that. Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather. I mean, it was a cash grab, but it was a very good cash grab. And he went about it all the wrong way. And I'm pretty sure that the Prizefight Podcast itself was built on talking about how much BS I thought that tactic was. I called it the McGregor hissy fit tactic. Right now, Stipe Miocic wants to fight Anthony Joshua in boxing. And I agreed with that. I mean, the UFC heavyweight division is kind of stale. Dana White acknowledged that. When Dana White signed Alan the Pretty Boy Crowder, he said we need heavyweights. So I'm not introducing anything new. It's exactly what it is. They know that. I think Stipe Miocic and Anthony Joshua was a lot closer than what McGregor versus Mayweather was. But that's neither here nor there. I'm talking about how we keep guys like Stipe Miocic in the UFC, how to keep them fighting in MMA. Chris Cyborg has received a boxing license. And California issuing boxing licenses started this whole thing. Let's not kid ourselves. Whenever Conor McGregor put out the "thanks for the cheese, I'm retiring" tweet, that came on the heels of California issuing a boxing license to the man. And it's none of California's concern that Conor McGregor's under contract to the UFC or that Chris Cyborg is under contract to the UFC. California was responding to an application, and a boxing license was issued. It is a telltale sign that the applicant is unhappy with the current situation and is looking to make movements to change that. Now, what's going to end up happening is the UFC is going to end up going bankrupt, trying to fight all these in court, when the money best being spent is to keep the divisions competitive and interesting. If Chris Cyborg or Stipe Miocic wants to walk away from the UFC to compete in boxing, if enough fighters do it at the exact same time, the UFC, WME, IMG is going to end up bankrupting themselves trying to take them all to court. Boxing has really ramped up its grab at combat sports, especially the market share. And that's why folks are interested. That's why Stipe Miocic thinks that that's where the competition is. Because historically, boxing heavyweights have been the names. Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield, Tommy Morrison, the Klitschko brothers, Vladimir and Vitaly, Anthony Joshua. The heavyweights have been in boxing. It's nothing new. And Stipe Miocic being a heavyweight, that's where he might have his eye set. Chris Cyborg said that if the women in the UFC do not want to compete with her, maybe the women in boxing do. What did I just say? We need to keep these divisions interesting for these folks. Boxing has been putting on super fights this year. And while Mayweather versus McGregor didn't steal fans from either side, a profound introduction was made. We need to ask ourselves, as MMA fans, how many of us tune into McGregor versus Mayweather and said, hey, this boxing ain't that bad. I remember 10 years ago when, as a misguided MMA fan of myself, before I was a host of MMA programming, I thought, man, boxing can go straight to hell. Boxing's boring. Boxing's dumb. MMA's where it's at. Boxing needs just to give up and die. I really thought that way, and I was wrong. Being introduced to boxing happened the right way. I got to see it live and I thought it was great. But now, on a much grander scale, boxing has said, hey, you know what? 2017 is the year. And Conor McGregor, who has been on the innovating side of a lot of things, and I can't take that away from him. He was the first ever 2-division champ for all of, 10 days, I think. But what's going to happen is athletes are going to start seeing what Conor McGregor did and how he was successful at it, and how he got paid, and how he was able to hold out to get his way. And that's exactly what's going to start happening with other folks. They're going to start getting the McGregor idea. They're going to start saying, hey, if Conor did it, why can't I? And that's what's going to happen. Divisions all over the sport need to be bolstered. They do. If we're going to keep guys like Stipe Miocic, like Chris Cyborg, like Conor McGregor, if we want to go that way, like Tyron Woodley, we need to make their divisions competitive. They need to feel like they're having a challenge. Frank Shamrock, the legend, who returned at Risen Fighting Federation for a grappling match against Kazushi Sakuraba, walked away from the UFC. Walked away at a time when the UFC was still in its infancy. Frank Shamrock was the middleweight champion. His title, that direct lineage, was the light heavyweight championship. Frank Shamrock, if he'd held out for a couple of years, may have had some great fights against guys like Randy Couture, like Chuck Liddell, like Tito Ortiz again. But there was nowhere for Frank to go. There was a clause in his contract to say, hey, you can't walk away, but if you declare retirement, all bets are off. That's a dangerous mentality. And it breaks my heart. It really makes me sad that fighters feel like they have to retire or resort to those kind of loopholes to go somewhere to find fulfillment in their athletic career. MMA as a sport is one full of potential. The human evolution. I mean, fighters today are leaps and bounds above the fighters of 10, 15 years ago. What's ultimately going to start happening is fighters are going to go away, they're going to retire, and then they're going to try coming back when the talent pool has grown, and then all the magic's really going to be gone. Ronda Rousey was one of the greatest champions. Regardless of gender, regardless of weight class, one of the greatest champions ever. And what's going to happen when she lets 10 years go by? Is she going to stay in competition shape when she wants to come back? I mean, is the magic of Ronda Rousey, Rowdy Ronda Rousey, still going to be there after she comes back? There has to be an absolute commitment to forcing champions to defend their titles and not competing outside of the division they champion. I hate to call out Conor McGregor again, but I mean, this whole conversation we're having is thanks to that guy. The featherweight division's a mess right now. Contendership is just now starting to recover. And when's the last time anyone has fought in a lightweight title fight before McGregor won the title? Going into McGregor versus Mayweather, he's had 5 or 6 title wins, and he has yet to defend one of them. You can call him champion, but you cannot call him a fighting champ. And that has absolutely made a mess out of a lot of things. And we need... How can you be a fighter on a local show and say, you know what, I'm a welterweight, and I want to fight against another welterweight or even lightweight, and say, I'm going to be lightweight champion? Okay. Well, if no one's committing to the division, if you win the lightweight championship and you go fight a welterweight or featherweight looking for super fights, what are you really champion of? You're a champion of chaos. You're a champion of a pecking order that really means nothing. It's like, whose line is it anyway? Where the rules don't matter and everything's pretty much made up. That's what happens when you let guys be champions and go around chasing super fights. The title means hardly anything. Conor McGregor is very good at winning titles, but is he good at defending them? We have no clue. One of the more important issues that we need to resolve right now is dehydration weight cutting. And I'm talking about extreme dehydration weight cutting. It's harmful. Dehydration is bad. I don't know any other colorful way to put that. If your body doesn't have water, your body doesn't work. Period. If your body does not have water, it starts shutting organs down. That's what happens whenever someone's dehydrated. Are these brand new concepts? Is that something we haven't talked about before? I mean, is that any secret? I mean, is that why you have to feed and water your pets every day? Because if they don't have water, they die? Well, that happens to most mammals, and we are human beings are mammals. If we don't have water, we die. If you suck water out of your body, you die faster. That's not a foreign concept. I mean, that is just medicine. Even before medicine, cavemen knew they had to drink water or else they died. I don't know how else to put that. I mean, so what weight cutting is not weight loss. Weight loss is the calculated burning of calories, the calculated intake of other calories so that you're losing body fat. That is weight loss. Weight cutting is sucking the water out so that you can weigh in for one fixed moment of time and then let your body go back to being wrecked. The more a fighter has to drop weight, the more likely it is that weight cut becomes unmanageable and that bout is canceled. I'm thinking of Johnny Riggs. I think Joe Riggs too, but I can't be certain. So, and think about all the guys who came in shape out of The Ultimate Fighter. I remember watching The Ultimate Fighter season 1, and Bobby Southworth is going through one of the most excruciating weight cuts I think I've ever witnessed. The benefit of a reality TV show, but I mean, that weight cut was awful. And he's doing irreparable harm to his body by sucking water out. That is what happens. I mean, that is just terrible. I'm completely amazed by that. And you know, the body can only recover so many times from such trauma. And we need to stop it. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure what it takes. I don't have a solution. I'm not sure if we need regulation about weighing in at a certain point before the fight or natural weight divisions, but something has to change because these guys are hurting themselves. That's my phone going off. Amazon wants to tell me stuff. Moving on. Most importantly, we need talent retention because without a fighter, let me say this again, without a fighter, without the guy who's wrapping up his hands, lacing up his gloves, we've got nothing. We can sit around and talk on podcasts and YouTube channels and newspapers all day, but without the guys who fight, we've got absolutely nothing. Without the guys who are going in and competing, we got nothing. So, let's think about it the way it is. Most, if not all, MMA fighters are independent contract. They get a 1099 at the end of the year after competing. That being said, there needs to be reasons for them to want to fight for one specific promotion or another, and exposure. The opportunity to be seen on TV just isn't cutting it anymore. I work for a really good real estate firm here in Wilmington, North Carolina, and the CEO of the company said to all of us, he said, the agents who work for our company do not have to come back the next day. That responsibility is on us to keep bringing them back. So the agents, in a real estate terminology, the agents are the ones who are going out to make the magic happen. And that's exactly what's happening with the fighters. The fighters are the ones creating the events to bring us all together. So if they don't have to come back. I mean, if they're just fighting ad hoc or one day at a time, they don't need to come back. If local extreme coastal fighting makes someone unhappy, they don't have to go back. They can take their talents elsewhere. The UFC has contracts, but I mean, there's ways around that. Conor McGregor. In order for this sport to thrive, there has to be incentive and motive for guys wanting to compete. If we think about it, their sponsorship losses was huge. And I mean, the Reebok deal, I mean, on Cage Nation TV, we have been just brutal about that Reebok deal because the money doesn't make sense. If you sit down and do a spreadsheet, if you do a spreadsheet and show what guys are making from the Reebok deal versus what they're making from the sponsorship dollars, they're taking haircuts just to compete in the UFC. And like I said, the exposure of being on television is just not enough anymore. It actually pays for a fighter to take a smaller guarantee with another promotion because of the sponsorship income. And I promise you, sit down with a notepad or a spreadsheet, and you'll see how it does not make sense for these guys to be competing for what they've been competing for anymore. Speaking of talent retention, it also does not benefit a promotion when a fighter has the ability to take their grievances to social media. It makes all of us look vulnerable. We're just now overcoming the stigma that we are a dangerous sport, that we are barbarians, that we are involved with a blood sport. Now it's an actual business. Guys are making money and money is flowing around. MMA promotions are being sold for billions instead of tens of thousands. It's a great day to be a fight fan. But if the talent, remember, they don't have to come back. It's on the promotion's job to make it lucrative for them, to be incentivized, to keep them. It does not benefit a fight promotion if the fighter goes to social media and says, hey, I tore my shoulder in the middle of a fight, but the company doesn't want to pay for it. It doesn't make sense it's not good for promotion when a fighter goes to Twitter and says, yeah, I was promised a $25,000 win bonus, but I never got it. Or, I was supposed to fight for the lightweight championship, but the champion's going to fight at welterweight. These are things that independent contractors have the ability to do, and it makes the sport look vulnerable. I am not saying that fighters should not take their grievances to the social media. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it is on a fight promotion to not create an opportunity where a fighter feels like they have to. The fighters are the ones who are making the product. They are the fighters. They are the competitors. They built the sport on their backs and the sweat from their brow. If they are being wronged, it is absolutely in their right to air those grievances. It's for the fight promotion, for the best of the sport, to make it feel like they don't have to. The last thing I'm identifying is that MMA as a sport, there has to be innovation. There has to be something for us to stay relevant and prepare for a future. The UFC struck silver with Fight Pass. I firmly believe that. I still subscribe. And why do I say struck silver instead of struck gold? Because the WWE did it first, and they did it better with one concept. The pay-per-views are included in the WWE network. For UFC Fight Pass, you have to pay extra for the pay-per-views, and there's no guarantee that the streaming is going to work. And I'm not faulting the UFC for that. I'm identifying it as an opportunity for improvement. Fight Pass is awesome. I love being able to go into the fight library. I can create playlists of fights. I can look up fighters that I know locally. And if the pay-per-views were included, I would be all about Fight Pass. I might even change the Prize Fight podcast to Guess What I Saw on Fight Pass Today podcast. If the pay-per-views were included, that would be just, it would be awesome. Now, the rules of competition are finite, and a lot of other promotions have killed themselves trying to innovate the sport, okay? How many times haven't we seen fight promotions, Yama Pit Fighting, the International Fight League saying, we're the next evolution of the sport. We're making it better. Well, you can't make it better. There's a reason why it's a relatively new concept in terms of 20 years in relation to boxing, because it needed the innovation. And now that the octagon is there, it still works. The Yama Pit, the bowl shape to prevent stalling is unnecessary. So when I say innovation, I'm thinking of popular. Innovation on how MMA is sought out and it is consumed, not the rules. The rules are being changed by very smart people, and we need to stay out of that. Pay-per-view is being brutalized by pirated streams and other pirating methods. I can't tell you the last time I heard someone say, hey, you know what? I'm looking forward to paying that $100 for watching that fight. No. And it's kind of unspoken. No one's ever come to me and said, hey, Albert, guess what? I'm going to be stealing the stream for UFC 215. It's unspoken that we know they're going to do it. They're going to be very crafty about it. It's going to happen. The reason that this sort of pirating activity is happening is because the terms of purchasing the fight have become intolerable. The good people of the world who have supported the sport, who go to local fights, who watch it on free cable, the reason they are rather committing criminal activity, and let's be honest, pirating a stream is criminal activity, they would rather commit the criminal activity than paying the high premium for a profile fight. That something has to change. If we want to talk about it on some of the most broad terms ever, think of prohibition. It took alcohol away, we still found a way to consume alcohol. You can keep raising the pay-per-view numbers, but eventually we're going to stop watching. There has to be an innovation with how this is consumed. Let's close out this discussion with the last thing I really need to touch on is with cable companies going on the defense. I don't subscribe to cable. I don't have to. I've got an antenna that I don't pay for, which I get some pretty decent channels because I do live in a city of Wilmington. I subscribe to UFC Fight Pass. I got the Fight app for free. Cable, it's just unnecessary. I don't need it. I don't need the hassle. There was a cable company up north that I dealt with that I swear my male pattern baldness was activated by dealing with this company. The customer service sucked on a level that is just incomprehensible. I would rather not deal with them. I would rather not subscribe to cable. It is no longer a necessity. It's no longer a necessary utility in my daily function. I don't need cable, so I did away with it. A lot of people are doing the exact same thing. The WWE has a network that you have to pay $10 for. And if people who love pro wrestling are able to get a hold of it. I love MMA, I've got Fight Pass. People who love football get the NFL network. All these things are streaming. They're streamable. So MMA promotions need to realize that pay-per-view likely is not the future. But what happens if the worst of the worst happens? What if cable companies start going out of business? The UFC's already showed signs that they're going to start outsourcing their streaming services. With the Fight app, we talked about that last week. Fight Pass could not handle the traffic of Mayweather versus McGregor. They had to pay out the refunds. How is MMA going to innovate to whenever cable companies are no longer as relevant as possible, or is no longer relevant to business functions? How do we get the fights for people to consume? I really think it's going to be encouraging live attendance, but it's also going to be streaming services. And how are they going to innovate those streaming services? What is going to be the benefit of me going to one streaming service of the other? These are business decisions that need to be made. The cost-cutting measures that the UFC has been taking have begun to hurt them. And it's hurt them in a way of fighters have begun to organize. People aren't paying pay-per-view prices anymore. They've started outsourcing Fight Pass. It's going to start hurting business. I'm saying these things because I love the sport, because I love the UFC. I'm not trying to damage the UFC's reputation. I'm trying to help, and I want that to come across that way. I am trying to put out information that all of us can benefit from. If the UFC were to call and say, hey, do you want to work for us today? Absolutely. I would be on the first plane to Vegas. I would put every ounce of knowledge and ability I have to work to make the sport as big and as bright as it possibly can be, because I love the sport that much. Next week on the Prize Fight podcast, we're likely going to be talking about Bellator and the Penn State University foray they're going to be getting into. A lot more coming up on that. Until next time, everybody, thank you very much for joining me for the Prize Fight podcast. I'm your host, the Big Fellah, Albert Miller. And until next time, fights, camera, action.
Thank you for tuning in to the Cage Nation Prize Fight podcast. All rights reserved. 2016 to 2017 Planet Aries Sports. The Prize Fight podcast is part of the Cage Nation Broadcast Network. For more information, visit www.cagenationtv.com.